Move back to political party news. And ActionSA is taking the IEC to court. This after the political party's name was not printed on the ward ballot papers for the local government elections. They also want all printed ballot papers destroyed and a confirmation order that the use of an abbreviation should be optional. Now, the IEC says it's the party's fault for not registering an abbreviated name. eNCA reporter Govan Whittles has more on that story. He joins us now. Govan, this is a real to and fro, and it's a technical issue, but I think there's very interesting arguments on both sides. So just give us the details of this case.
Essentially, Sally, this centers around the IEC's assertion that you have to have an abbreviation for your name to appear on the ballot paper in the local government elections, and ActionSA saying you don't need to have an abbreviation. And all of this argument would be contested around a section of the Electoral Act which says parties should submit the abbreviated name of their party, if any. Might come down to those two words, if any. ActionSA saying that its full name is 8 characters, and the ballot paper on voting day for the local government elections will have space for 8 characters besides the logo of any given party, and therefore it doesn't need to have an abbreviated name for ActionSA. It says it chose the name because it doesn't have an abbreviation for it. Of course, the IEC says this is wrong, and it should be noted that the IEC published the registration of ActionSA in the Government Gazette shortly afterwards, and in that registration it's indicated that ActionSA said that the abbreviation section for the party is not applicable. Let's listen to the national chairperson of ActionSA explaining the party side of the story and how they'll approach this urgent application to the Electoral Court.
In the registration papers, there is a section 3 of the papers which deals with the abbreviated name of the party. It says delete, which is not applicable. In our forms, we said not applicable, and then underlined the following sentence: there is no abbreviation in the name of the party, end quote. When ActionSA did this, we were very clear that ActionSA is the name of our party, and it is how our party should always be represented. It was never and could not be understood to be a waiver to say that we accept that when ballot papers are prepared, please leave our name off the ballot papers. That would be absolutely absurd.
Makes a good point, actually. The IEC basically saying, well, you didn't fill out the form correctly. But ActionSA is even going so far as to say this is sabotage, which is quite a hefty claim, particularly bearing in mind they're not the only party that made this mistake. Am I right?
Indeed, there is at least one other party which doesn't have a name or an abbreviation for its name, the Change Party, I believe, on the ballot paper. And ActionSA is saying that the crux of their argument is that even on the registration form which the parties have filled out, there's no indication that the abbreviation listed on this form is what will be on the ballot paper, and failure to list an abbreviated name for your party means that you would not be represented with the name on the ballot paper and only with the logo. And ActionSA has been bumping heads with the IEC since it was registered as a political party. If you recall, initially the party was taken to task for the colors it had in its logo, which were too close to the South African flag. It then emerged that ActionSA's candidates weren't on the approved list of candidates from the IEC after the deadline had passed, and the IEC subsequently rectified that and placed those candidates on there. And this latest incident has got ActionSA's president, Herman Mashaba, saying, well, this is sabotage, and the IEC wants to sabotage our participation in the elections, although he hasn't presented any concrete proof of this, nor has he identified which officers of the IEC would be targeting ActionSA. So it's a bold claim, but for now, that's all it is. It's a claim. Let's have a look at what Herman Mashaba had to say.
Sabotage, and in fact I call it sabotage because this has really been a trend, has been a pattern since the registration of our attempt to register as ActionSA. And I'm unapologetic about this, that I don't really take this to be an oversight. I take this to be a deliberate efforts by the IEC to frustrate our efforts to participate in these elections.
sabotage seems like it might be a bit of a stretch to prove, as you've already alluded to, Govan. This issue goes to the Electoral Court now. Wouldn't ActionSA actually have a better argument saying that it's the IEC's responsibility to make sure those ballot papers are really clear for any voter to read and understand? Because if it's not clear, you're not delivering a free and fair election.
Indeed, and ActionSA is saying that in this case it would be more logical for the IEC to note the clerical, what it could interpret as a clerical error on the registration form, and then include ActionSA's name as it's wanted it, or assign a preferred abbreviation for the party. But the IEC sticking to the letter of the law, which is that if you don't have that abbreviation submitted in your registration, it won't appear there. And what's also interesting here is that the political parties in South Africa are each entitled to 3 clear identifying characteristics on the ballot paper and during the election. The first during the election would be the full name of the party, and then on the ballot paper, the parties have the right to have 2 clear identifying markers on the ballot paper, which would be the abbreviation and the logo. ActionSA is saying it will go to the Electoral Court, hopefully on Friday, and it will argue that it is now being denied its right to be clearly identified on the ballot paper, but it will also argue that the IEC's interpretation of the registration form is completely wrong. What's interesting here, Sally, is that the IEC has not filed its notice to oppose ActionSA's application on an urgent basis. Instead, we understand they've already appointed attorneys, which suggests that they're currently receiving legal advice on how to oppose, if they're going to oppose, or whether they should abide by the application, ergo allow ActionSA's full name to appear on the ballot paper. So a lot of legal wrangling happening right now. We understand the IEC is in an executive council meeting, and it should make that decision public tomorrow morning.
Time certainly is of the essence, isn't it? Thank you very much, eNCA reporter Govan Whittles there.